Hey, it's Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and this is going to be Chronicles of Drunagor Age of Apocalypse, should you back it or not. And the short version, by the way, is as far as holding its value, you're good there. We'll cover more stuff, we'll get into it more, we'll talk about different aspects of the pledge levels, the stretch goals, all those things, but you're good as far as holding its value. Now, we're going to go ahead and jump straight into it. We're going to go through everything, timestamps down below as usual, in case you want to see any particular thing. But first of all, there's a 48-hour free gift of an initiative tracker, a metal coin to be your initiative tracker instead. If you want that, this video is going up on, well, a little over 24 hours. So if you're one of the people watching this video within the first 18-ish hours or so of the video, then there's still time to go ahead and get that free 48-hour gift. If you're watching it after, it's just an initiative tracker. Don't worry too much about it. That said, aside from that, let's focus on the fact that this is at $1 million within 1 day so far. Not even a day. We haven't even hit a full 24 hours, at least not when I'm recording, and we're past $1 million. I'm insanely happy for Creative Game Studios. I mean, their last campaign, the original Chronicles of Drunagor went to like 300,000, something like that. I should probably check that up. Let's see, we have it on a screen somewhere over here. I don't know exactly where it is. It's somewhere over here. Here we go. Side screen over here. It went to 543,000 for the last campaign. We're at $1 million in day one, which means we're likely going to be seeing, well, 2 million, maybe 2.5 million by the time this is done. It could go either way. We'll see. The nice thing, by the way, is that 48-hour free gift not being a particularly large and obnoxious one. Like, look at this $25 miniature you're getting for free. That does mean that you're not going to be seeing that mid-campaign dump as people are like, well, I missed the pledge or I'm dropping out. It's a nice 48-hour free thingy. It's nothing particularly major. But let's go ahead and jump on into it. We have tons of stretch goals to go over. We have the campaign to go over. Lots of information to cover. Timestamps down below as usual. So, Chronicles of Drunagor. This is Age of Apocalypse. This is the Age of Darkness Apocalypse expansion. Chronicles of Drunagor is effectively a dungeon crawling game. There's plenty of content on my channel around it already, as well as content on a variety of other channels as well. So if you want to see a variety of different opinions about this game, the pros, the cons, all those things, gameplay, whatever it is, there's a ton of content out there for you to find. Effectively, Chronicles of Drunagor is a dungeon crawling game, and the highlight of this game is going to be the cube system to begin with. The cube system is going to be one of the highlights, the action cubes that you're going to spend, and then as you withdraw them, you put curse cubes down, locking off spots forever. The upgrading is going to be top tier. The upgrading is going to be every single campaign, every single mission you go on is going to result in some form of upgrade, whether it's new equipment, new skills, new class skills, new anything. There's going to be a ton of stuff over there. There's going to be the interaction system. The interaction system is going to be a storybook adventure aspect that you're going to encounter a point in your dungeon crawl, and you'll have a limited number of interactions with something before you can no longer interact. So maybe you meet a family, maybe you see a dead body, maybe you see some sort of pedestal with armor on it. There's going to be a variety of different interactions you can go through, but they all have like this choice of how you interact. Maybe it's a boss fight. Maybe the first interaction with a boss involves making a choice as whether to threaten, cower, bully, surprise, or any of those things, all of which will have an effect in the game. So the interaction system is one of the highlights of the game. The door system where you're going to have this slowly unraveling dungeon. Let's see if we can see any photos over here. Well, not great in terms of that. We're scrolling through other stuff over here. There's going to be a slowly unraveling dungeon over here. You can kind of see it drop over here, where you're going to unlock one door at a time, going through different parts of the dungeon and seeing new things evolve as you go through it. So you'll open a door and then set it up based on that. And that can be variable as well, especially if you use the app, which will give you both more dungeons to play with, as well as the fact that it's going to be giving you higher levels of difficulty. If you're ever finding that the earlier levels are a bit too easy, you can easily go into nightmare mode using the app and have a harder dungeon that will produce more of a challenge for you to conquer. Whole bunch of things are separating Chronicles of Drunagor from other dungeon crawling systems. Now, it's not without its weaknesses. Weaknesses coming in the form of, depending on various critiques or opinions, there's going to be a limit in the number of treasure cards. The treasure cards that they had in the game, the original base game, had not a ton of treasure chests, and the rewards weren't necessarily that great, not giving you all the reason in the world to open or encounter or get every single chest you find. It's nice, but don't go out of your way and risk all the damage because you're not getting a reward that's worth that. The enemy AI was very much on the weaker end in the game. The enemy AI's basic move towards you and attack, very limited degree of depth or anything past just, you do your thing and then enemy does its thing, which is fair for a lot of games, but for a game of this otherwise depth, the enemy AI was very much on the simple end and can particularly get boring as you play more and more campaigns. The sprawling dungeon adventure is cool when you're actually unlocking it, but the table space and the interruption to game time were certainly downsides as well. The game trays setup and everything else was definitely very much this game gives you a ton of content, but actually accessing it and getting it set up and playing with it, there were a lot of critiques around that. Just the ability of, okay, great, but every time I play it, I have to set it up, which is another degree of investment in the game. Let's see, there was one more thing I want to... The linear nature of the campaign. The linear nature of the campaign was definitely a con as well. The fact that the campaign is basically just it's like, story and then play and story and play, and the interaction system was the highlight of that, but the story itself was just fairly linear and progressional in terms of what it's doing. This game had a ton of highs, a ton of reasons why it is an excellent adventure to go into, but also a bunch of reasons why it may or may not be the game for you. That's all of the background around Chronicles of Drunagor, but this campaign is going to be a reprint and an expansion, and Apocalypse very much is an expansion. If you do not have the base game, do not get Apocalypse. Speaking of which, you can go ahead and go through the FAQ. Tons of good questions and answers over there. Potentially a little too many questions, but a lot of solid questions and answers for anything from VAT to what's included to what update packs. All those things will be included in the FAQ. Past that, let's go ahead and go through the pledge levels here. We're going to be jumping around a bit. I'm going to be mostly trying to follow the campaign page, so just because it's easier than jumping around. So we're going to go a little bit out of the order I normally would choose myself. As of right now, we have 3 pledges, and I have to assume that number will grow. I have to assume, because we currently have an Apocalypse Adventures pledge, the new content, which is going to be giving you the Apocalypse base pledge plus stretch goals and giving you all of that, and it's giving you $95, which is going to be, $95 for that. We have the reprint hero pledge. The reprint hero pledge is giving you basically the core, almost the most limited amount of content you can have past just literally buying these separately, but you get the core pledge plus the stretch goals from the original campaign, a little bit of a bump from the original price tag, which is fair. Keep those original backers who invested in you happy, but giving you that same price point, instead of $99, $115 for the core pledge plus stretch goals. That's going to give you plenty of content for your Chronicles of Drunagor story. We have All In Age of Darkness reprint. This is going to be a reprint of all the original content. To be very clear, this is not an all-in for this campaign. Please do not select this pledge thinking that it's an all-in for the Apocalypse content. It is not. This is giving you all the original stuff from the original campaign, plus like some new things like the Foreteller app, but it's not giving you the Apocalypse gameplay in this pledge level. That's going to be $339, which is a lot of money, and that's before shipping and potentially before VAT. VAT will be charged for you, so if you're subject to VAT, it will be charged. That means between shipping, VAT, this pledge level here is going to be a $500 pledge level, which is not a small amount of money, unfortunately. Now, I assume that we'll see more pledge levels because they're likely going to have an all-in, at least 2 more all-ins. They're likely going to have an all-in for this campaign by the time everything's done, as well as an all-in for, well, absolutely everything. I assume we'll see those. I don't know if we'll see those. I just think that, given their track record and the fact that we have an all-in to begin with, it's likely that we're going to see that. Now, I will note, I love that both these pledge levels and likely future pledge levels, they have shown you both the savings on MSRP and the savings of buying it separated. So in other words, savings off MSRP depends on whether this goes to retail, at what price point, when. I am not 100% confident that this will or won't go to retail, and at what price point. This is an expensive big game. That MSRP it might go to retail, I don't know, but that is the MSRP is always a bit of the discount MSRP is a bit of a fake number since nothing is actually charged MSRP. But the savings from buying them separated, I know that if I get the reprint hero pledge, I'm saving $33 from buying these separated. If I get the all-in, I'm saving $47 from buying these separated. So I do like the fact that they're showing you and making you so you don't have to do the math yourself. They're saying, hey, you can buy these things in the add-ons below, but it's going to cost you X much more. This is going to be the savings you see. So they're giving you a lot of information up front. Which brings us to stretch goals. We're just going to literally just go through all the stretch goals very quickly. The short idea of this is it's going to be a whole bunch of more classes, more dungeon rules, more characters, more miniatures, more everything. Let's go ahead and go through it. And to begin with, they have an organizing tray for the doors. So already we're starting to see them addressing and improving upon the organizational system from the base game, or more specifically the lack of a good organizational system from the base game. So we're going to see that with the organizing tray over here. You're going to see that with, again, more organizing trays for cards, miniatures, tokens, keeping track of all your cards in a good area over here. This will, the tricky part with these things is I don't know to what degree they're going to fit all cards and from all expansions and or not. I don't know what that system is. I hope it fits all cards across the board. If it doesn't, it kind of limits its ability to, it limits its efficiency if it only fits cards from, let's say, Apocalypse and the core box and nothing else. So I hope it fits from everything, but we're seeing more organizational system with dividers, all great there. We're seeing treasure chest items. That's 10 new treasure chest items. Again, they're addressing the lack of variance around treasure chest items. That was a common complaint, and so they're saying, hey, no problem, we'll give you more stuff. Again, new treasure chest items again. New treasure chest items again. We're seeing 30 new treasure chest items to be put in. No specific text on any of these. They're basically just, I mean, maybe some of them do. Some of them have some specific text, but a lot of them had just generic text on them as well. We have Backers Campaign Chapter 5. So this is going to be part of the Stretch Goals box. They talked about how part of the Stretch Goals is going to be an adventure, a chapter that the backers are going to be creating as we go through this campaign. So we see this over here, Backers Campaign Chapter 5 and Part 2 of Chapter 5. We have new dungeon rules. There's going to be a bunch of these new dungeon rules. Again, not a lot of text over there. We have the Bruiser dungeon rule. We have more monster cards. These are not more monsters. These are more monster cards, giving you more ways that the same miniature will interact. So same miniature, different card. We have more monster cards for the Larvae Mage. Larvae? I think it's Larva. Larvae has an E at the end. We have a new Minion Commander, Medusan Hexer. We have new Dungeon Rule, Warden. Again, lots of stuff over here. Skeletonite cards. We have the Witch cards. We have new Dungeon Rule Slayer. We have new Dream Titan. And those are just cards again. We have the Medusan Hexer. We have the Adept Dungeon Rule. We have the Backers Campaign Chapter 6, Part 1 and Part 2. We have the new Dungeon Rule Trickster. Again, bunch of new Dungeon Rules over here, really adding to the variability. We have a new mini and commander, the Plague Scourge. We have Backers Campaign Chapter 7. We have the Arena Hero crossover. So this is going to be one of multiple crossover heroes we're going to be seeing. This is is it Maeve? I think it's Maeve. I never know these names. But it's going to be one of the heroes from Arena the Contest. That's going to be a crossover into Chronicles of Drunagor Apocalypse. We're going to see more of those both now as well as in future stretch goals, I assume in future stretch goals. We have Backers Campaign Chapter 7, Part 2. Backers Campaign Chapter 8. Lots of things being unlocked here. Commander 2 Monster. You know, we got that. We have Medusan Hexer. I'm just rattling through these. New camp items. So now we start the process of seeing a whole bunch of camp items, a bunch of camp items for each level. So this is going to be the level 1 options, just giving you more stuff, more gear, more fun things to augment and develop your hero in this game. We have the new Minion Commander. We have Chapter 8, Part 2, additional monster cards, new camp items for level 2, Storm Sunder crossover. No real information here past it's going to be a Storm Sunder crossover. I like Storm Sunder. I like crossovers. I hope I like this miniature and board and character. New Minion Commander, new camp items for level 4. Did we skip level 3? Did we skip level 3? I think we skipped level 3. Maybe I missed it, but I thought we skipped level 3. New campaigns for level 3. No, we didn't skip it. We just did it out of order. I'm glad we did that. That seems like a small little mistake there. So we're still missing level 5. Again, this is still early in the campaign. This is still day 1. There's a ton of potential stretch goals to see as we continue to go through it, which brings us to the add-ons. Add-ons so far are going to be the Apocalypse Adventures. We have the basic pledge over here. That's not add-ons, that's pledge levels. No, that is add-ons. We have the Apocalypse Adventures over here. We have the 4 Horsemen. This is going to be $89 and it's going to be giving you 4 gigantic miniatures that you otherwise will get as standees. This is going to be relevant to the 4 Horsemen Apocalypse box. Understand that these are, well, this is a large box, okay? This is a very large box. Let's see if we can show you how large the box. Let's go through the miniatures first. Miniatures are going to be giving you 4 miniatures, all fairly large and 1 fairly large. We have the Famine Horseman. We have the Plague Horseman. The War Horseman. We have the Death Horseman 255mm boss miniature. This is going to be a size comparison and scale of those 4 miniatures. This gigantic guy over here, a tiny little hero, the other 3 bosses, and then you can see over here, do we have the picture of... Rick is not holding it over here. And then we have a size comparison on the boxes, which is going to be this over here is the Chronicles of Drunagor base box. This is the 4 Horsemen box. For context, the Chronicles of Drunagor base box barely fits into a Calyx cube based on the width and dimensions. So it has a little more height range, but when you put it into a cube, it basically barely fits. This 4 Horsemen box is going somewhere else. It is not going inside your Calyx cube. I guarantee it. It's not, well, I shouldn't guarantee it. I don't know why I'd guarantee it. I don't think it will. I can't imagine why it would. Maybe if you angled it that way. I don't think so. Either way, it's a large box. The other boxes were large. This is a large box. And understand that in addition to the $89 you're paying for, you'll also be paying shipping on that box as well. So that $89 box may well be costing you $115, $120 for no gameplay content whatsoever, just miniatures. If you'd like that, by all means, but understand you're paying a lot of money for basically just gigantic miniatures. Now, I am appreciative of the fact that Chronicles of Drunagor, that Creative Game Studios, separated those out. That is a lot of money to force people to pay for a bunch of boss miniatures. I am glad they separated it out and gave people the ability to choose whether they're in on that or not so much. We have the Hero Pack. Now this one I'd much more recommend over the other one. This is going to be giving you 8 new heroes to the game, 8 heroes, 4 classes for $35. In my opinion, based on my own biases, a much better use of money than gigantic over-the-top miniatures. I'm not saying I don't like gigantic over-the-top miniatures. I love gigantic over-the-top miniatures, but I'm much more a fan of more gameplay. We have Mordred, the Elf Necromancer. We have Sif, the Azulian Necromancer. We have Sahara, the Draconian Shaman. We have Garamond, the Orc Shaman. We have Diana, the Valkyrie Sword Mage. We have Azriel, the Human Sword Mage. We have Brigitte, the Dwarf Warlord. We have Drix, the Efreet Warlord. And that's going to be 2, 4, 6, 8. That's going to be 8 new heroes, new classes, 4 new classes, the Sword Mage, Warlord, Necromancer, and Shaman, with 4 different versions of them. That's going to be that over there. And then the last current add-on we have, I assume we'll see more, is going to be the $35 COD Apocalypse dice set, giving you basically a bunch of dungeon, dragon, monster eye situations dice. These look very cool. I'd love to see like how easily you can see the numbers on them, because at this angle you can't necessarily. In person I think it's probably better. In general, when I've seen these dice on computers and you see them in person, it's usually a little easier to see them in person, but no necessary guarantee there. So understand, if you get these, $35 for a bunch of dice, very cool dice, but also not necessary at all and may impact visibility. So take that risk into account as well as you get those. And lastly, we have the individual add-ons for all the original. I'm not going to go through each of these. These are mostly just all the content from the original base game in case you don't want to get the all-in pledge. This is what you can do as far as parsing it out. Some of those things might be relevant, like getting the Foreteller app in case you already have the game and you want the Foreteller app for the core game only. So that's going to be options over there. And that's primarily going to be everything as far as add-ons, stretch goals, optional buys, pledge levels, all of that. Anything else I am missing? So there is going to be a TTS demo. I want to cover that. So there's going to be a TTS demo for the game in case you want to play this game on Tabletop Simulator. Just look how much content there is. This is just going through the content of the game. Let's go through the Apocalypse changes. So Apocalypse changes, new content, Apocalypse Adventures. What is Apocalypse doing different to the game? Now I talked about this already in my review. I have a review with Quacklope of the Apocalypse game. Basically, Apocalypse is addressing the flaws or faults of the base game in a variety of ways. Some of which I think almost all of which are just straight up improvements. But it's not necessarily going to solve some of the problems completely. To that end, linear story. Apocalypse is going to be introducing not just the continuation of the interaction system, but rather the depth of the interaction system, the way it'll evolve across multiple interactions, the way you'll have various companions or titles or things that interact, so that one interaction will play off the last interaction multiple times across the course of a 4-adventure arc in each of the 4 adventure arcs. So you're going to have this carryover that's going to be like, oh, you encountered a person, that person is with your party now, and if you still have him with your party, if he's still alive, when you make it to the next interaction, you may have a different series of events around that. So it does introduce a much less linear pathway to the way the story will develop, including having branching adventures. You may have totally different adventures or pathways within the dungeon, different situations that will develop as you choose different options in the game. So it's addressing the linear aspect of the game in that sense. The setup and teardown and the general accessibility. As you can see already, they are introducing a variety of game trays or different options there, things that will hopefully make it easier. It does not mean it will be easy. There's a difference between easy and easier. They are clearly trying to make the accessibility of this game easier. That said, there's still a lot of content for this game, and one of the problems you have is the base game doesn't give you the level of variety you'd want, especially in the monsters. The heroes are great, but the monster variety in the base game is not necessarily to the level that you'd want. But the more stuff you mix into the base game, the more stuff you try to combine, the harder it is to actually get that thing you need. So it's one of those constant, base versus all-in dilemmas you have of more content is better, but it makes it even harder to set up a game that was hard to set up to begin with. So all these trays are great. They are awesome. I'm very happy with them. I hope they continue to address and improve upon the accessibility that Chronicles of Drunagor has. The treasures, as you said already, the limited variety in treasures, they are clearly addressing that as well. What else was there? They are addressing... I don't know what else there was, but they have a ton of new stuff in that sense. They have a deeper narrative. They have more monsters. More monsters not necessarily a problem. If you have the all-in content, the more monsters are already plenty. They're giving you new skills. It's going to be a new thing that we're going to see over here. This potentially adds a degree of fiddliness, but I really liked how King of Average pointed out, and I didn't really think about this because unfortunately these skills, while we played with the game, the skills did not really come into play in our prototype that we had. And King of Average pointed out a very good point that I didn't think of, which is I wasn't as impressed with the skills because I thought it just added another degree of fiddliness to the game. But he pointed out that as you leveled up your characters, your base skills became less fun. Your base skills became less worthwhile. And so leveling up your base skills keeps your base skills on par with the continued evolution and development of your character, which is a very good point and takes away from my critique of, do we really need these? It's not bad, but it's just another thing to track. So now I'm actually happy to see these here because that was a very good point. We have new maps, just tons of newer maps. We have streamlined darkness rules. That's going to be a big deal. The darkness rules in the original base game were definitely on the fiddly side. I still personally find it fiddly, but this was less fiddly. This gave you more agency, less questions about how things played around each other. Overall, I thought this was an improvement to the system. I personally don't love the darkness system. I could do with or without it. It drives the game forward, but I like the improvement to it at the very least. We have more doors, more pathways, incredible boss fights. All of that is going to be what Apocalypse is giving you. So let's go into the should you back it, should you not. Where should we go ahead and jump over here? I don't know, no particular good point. Let's just go ahead and jump to the beginning top of the page where you can see basically everything in this page over here. Chronicles of Drunagor Age of Apocalypse, should you back it or not? I said this in the beginning. This game will hold its value. That's not my question at all. If you look at the original base pledge and how much it sells for on the secondary market, this game is rated a 9.1 on Board Game Geek right now. It's a game... That's my phone dinging. This game is rated a 9.1 on Board Game Geek. This is a game that people generally seem to be loving. Not without flaws, not without faults, not without people who don't like it. But that's going to be true of every game. Overall, though, this game is highly sought after. This game is well loved by a ton of people. I had a lot of things that I loved about the game. My biggest problem was the accessibility of getting it to the table again and again and again. And I will tell you that Apocalypse has only added to my desire to actually table it because I find the interaction and evolving story across the game that I'm already going through to be just another drive, another reason to jump in. And it's something that they are backtracking to the original base game. They are taking those interactions and they're going to have an upgrade pack that's either purchasable on its own, or if you buy all the Apocalypse content, you will go ahead and be able to get that added. Basically, they're going to check. It doesn't matter whether you are official returning backer or whether you got it secondhand. You're going to get access to that. Again, you can either buy it separately or as part of any larger pledge with the expansion content. So overall, this game is a solid game, and people like it, and it should hold its value just fine, just like the original base game did. Now, the one caveat to that is what happens if it does go to retail? What happens if this game does generally just see a higher availability in retail? I'm skeptical that it will, or at any price point that realistically makes sense. The sheer cost of everything that goes on here, the sheer overhead involved in this, I do not see this as being a retail available option. I see this as being kind of in the veins of Awakened Realms retail, which you may see the occasional print run show up at retail. I do not think it will be frequent. I do not think it will be common. I think the amount of content you get in this game, between exclusives, between extras, between just the discounted MSRP, and between the low retail availability, I think this will 100% be a solid pledge, a worthwhile pledge, to the point that I'm going to be putting this on my Patreon insurance of the month thingy. I have a Patreon option for Kickstarter insurance where I basically guarantee I'll buy your pledge off you if you go ahead and, well, decide it's not for you. I'll throw a link to that in the description down below for more details there. Overall, I'm not worried about Chronicles of Drunagor holding its value at all. It does not mean you should get the game, and it does not mean you should get everything for the game. Depending on who you are, depending on what you're looking at, I think that the things that Apocalypse adds that are essential to me is primarily going to be the story, the deepening story of the game. The rest of the things are nice. I think they're all solid, but how much value do you place on any individual one aspect of the game? How much value do the game trays add? How much value does the new darkness system add? And the new darkness system, you could already implement the rules yourself, honestly, in the original game if you wanted to. There's going to be a variety of different aspects that Apocalypse adds, but I think the most interesting one, the most compelling, is going to be that aspect of the narrative and interaction having more depth, and that's something they're going to be backtracking to the original game. So I would say if you're on a budget and you want to enjoy and experience Chronicles of Drunagor Apocalypse, Chronicles of Drunagor Age of Darkness, getting the original core box plus stretch goals is likely going to be a solid budget way to jump into this game. Budget is with a grain of salt because you're still looking at 150 plus with shipping and VAT and all of that, so it's still not necessarily a cheap option, but I don't think you need to go spending $500 to experience all that this game has to offer. And if you do want to get all the content, again, even just the bosses, the miniature bosses in the game will add $130, $140 by the time you factor in shipping and everything else to your cost. So there's a lot of money you can spend here. There's a lot of ways you can get Chronicles of Drunagor, and I think all of it will hold its value if you're selling it. But if you're not selling it, think through what you need, think through what you'll actually enjoy and experience, think through whether you are the kind of person who goes through all the content, and ultimately, by the way, obviously, do what you want. If you just want the content, get the content. But if you're finding yourself pulled in by the fact that you want to experience this game but you don't want to go all in, I genuinely believe getting the core box plus stretch goals will give you enough variety and depth to your experience that you will be just fine with Chronicles of Drunagor for quite some time, possibly until the next time they have a campaign. If they do, I don't actually know if they will. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, have a good one.